good title, I think. Yoga Beyond the Mat, because many people really, I think the majority of people in the Western world who are a little familiar with yoga, familiar with the term, and have some idea what's involved, at least in the Western world with yoga, they feel that yoga means what you do on a mat, different physical exercises. And of course that's definitely part of yoga, but there's a lot more to yoga beyond just what you do on the mat. If you've read a bit of Eastern literature, like really traditional yoga literature, you would have come across Bhagavad Gita. Generally you would definitely have come across Bhagavad Gita, because Bhagavad Gita, in terms of the traditional literature, Bhagavad Gita is really sort of the mainstay. It's just the foundational literature about yoga, because you are just too kind. You shouldn't, and you don't need to, but thank you. Yeah, Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, the speaker, is introducing to Arjuna, who ends up at least being his disciple. He introduces to him a number of types of yoga, and what is typically known in the West generally as yoga, meaning the physical exercises, hatha yoga. It's really quite a small part of the picture of yoga. Hare Krishna, welcome. Right. Yeah. It's actually one part, the physical exercises, what is known as hatha yoga in the Western world, is one part of one form of yoga, which has 8 parts. Ashtanga yoga. Ashta means 8, and anga means limbs or parts. So yes, the physical exercises, I'm sure you've seen pictures like this gentleman here sitting like that, but maybe like with hands extended like that. You've seen such pictures before, I suppose. Yeah, something like that. Hatha yoga, physical exercises. Anyway, let's take a step back though. That yoga, just in the broad sense, yoga as a Sanskrit term, yoga means to link. Well, in the most fundamental and broadest sense, it just means to link, a link. But then in application, generally it means to link with God. So any type of process, practice, any school of thought or of religion which is to do with linking with God or having a relationship with God, you can, it would be quite correct in terms, of the language. It would be quite correct to say it's a form of yoga. very much so. So like the NGK, or just Christianity, or Islam, they're forms of yoga. They're forms of yoga. You know, if you informed them of that, I don't know. I suspect they might not really want to accept it or like to accept it, but certainly in terms of the language, it's true. They're forms of yoga. So, but in the actual tradition of yoga, and like looking at Bhagavad Gita and related texts, the ancient texts, not the modern texts, power yoga, or these types of different moderned up forms of yoga. That's another thing, but the actual tradition itself, the thing is this, and it's such an interesting point, is that yoga, meaning a process which links you with God, in the tradition you get different forms of yoga with different names, generally related to the approach they take, or the goal they're trying to achieve, of linking with God, or you could say linking different parts of us with God. Hatha yoga, linking with God on a physical level through physical exercises. They're not just like exercises like, you may run or do something like that, or go to the gym, it's exercise, but they're physical activities which bring the physical system in tune, more in tune, or ultimately really in tune with nature, which is ultimately God's nature. And therefore you'll find in the tradition, and it's there actually in modern day yoga a lot, is that, for example, something like being vegetarian is just a natural part of yoga, because our bodies, our digestive systems are basically like, what would you say, typical vegetarian animal digestive systems. Long intestine, not like a carnivorous creature like a dog, just like a dog, or a cat, or a lion, or a tiger. Very short, very, very short intestinal system for quickly getting rid of what they eat. But the intestinal system of a vegetarian animal is long. It's always long. Yeah, so that's what our intestinal system is like. So to bring our physical system in harmony with nature, which is the nature of God, it also involves it definitely involves being vegetarian if you want to really sort of make the most of it, as much as can be made of it. So that's the physical form, the Hatha yoga. Improving your relationship with God by bringing your physical system in tune with the natural arrangement made by God. Then another form of yoga, and in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna discusses that, it more or less gives a chapter to it, is dhyana yoga, Dhyana, dhyana yoga. Dhyana means to meditate, to focus the mind. So traditionally, one would focus the mind on sound, vibration, mantra. So it's also dhyana yoga, sometimes also called mantra yoga. Mantra meaning sound vibration which delivers the mind from its entanglement just in worldly affairs. Mantra is a Sanskrit word, compound term, compound of two words, man and tra. Man means the mind, and tra is the root form. The root form, they would say in Sanskrit, the root form of the verb triate, which means to deliver, or even to protect or deliver. Yeah, so to deliver the mind, mantra, sound vibration which delivers the mind from its entanglement in, politics, economics, and all these very worldly things that people are generally very much or just completely caught up in. So that dhyana yoga or mantra yoga means now it's not to do with the physical body, but it's to do with the mind, focusing the mind and bringing the mind into harmony with God. In other words, yoga ultimately is theistic, is specifically theistic. It's not just like, mechanical, just do this exercise, do that exercise, something like that. So that's dhyana yoga. Hatha yoga to do with the body, dhyana yoga to do with the mind, and then another form of yoga is called Sankhya. Sankhya, Sankhya, Sankhya yoga. Literally, Sankhya means to analyze. And the idea with Sankhya yoga is that it brings one's intelligence into harmony with reality, or into harmony with God. So you see, physical hatha yoga, mental dhyana yoga or mantra yoga, and then the actual intellect, the intelligence, Sankhya yoga, to analyze in such a way, analyze this world in such a way that gradually you come to see how all the different component elements, Shri Shri Nitai Mayapur Chandra Ki Jai, Hare Krishna. Yeah, just to give an example, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about, you could say, the building blocks of the world, beginning first of all on an elemental level with earth, water, fire, air, and ether or sky or ether, subtle element. Earth, water, fire, air, these are very foundational elements in terms of the structures of things in this world. Like when I was young at school, I was actually born and raised in New Zealand. I was taught that our bodies, if I remember correctly, our bodies are something like 70% water. Have you heard something like that? Something around 70. Did you hear about that? Did you hear about that? Something like that. Water. And it's the same. H2O. It's water. Is it Valpray? Oh, really? That's nice. But it's essentially H2O. But the thing is, here's an interesting little minor point. You buy a bottle of water. Bottled water is extremely popular these days. When I was young, you never buy water, ever. Literally never. I never bought water. My parents never bought water. It just came out of a tap. But when you buy water, you notice on the side there's a list of ingredients. It's not just H2O, but there's some sodium and, I don't know, but there's various things, right? So in other words, strictly speaking, if you want to really get into it, what you buy as water, it's not exactly water. It's water plus, some other things. And things like sodium, it is a part of earth. I mean, we say earth, water, fire, ether, they can all be subdivided. So what you buy, Valpray, it's water, it is water, plus certain aspects of earth, because like chemicals are subdivisions of the broad category of earth, right? Anyway, that's sort of by the way. But the thing is that in Sankhya, because Bhagavad Gita specifically differentiates between the mind and the intelligence, that these are two different things. They're actually independent of each other. Generally in like Western psychology, they're merged together. Yeah. But in the traditional yoga culture, they're completely separated. The mind is just that thing which sort of responds to stimuli in sort of automatic ways, whereas the intelligence is the thing which evaluates and makes, like, hopefully logical decisions. So there we got three types of yoga: Hatha yoga, dhyana or mantra yoga, and Sankhya yoga, which is intellectual and involves analyzing and trying, basically, when you observe the world, to effectively see that, okay, there's earth, with some water, and there's air, and, like air, sometimes when air is moving, wind is blowing, it carries odors. Like if it passes over nice flowers like jasmine, then it smells nice. But then its air, smell, odor is part of earth. So then it's air plus earth, or, a sort of a factor, a part of earth. Yeah, and then, so those are 3 forms of yoga. In terms of the title of our presentation, Yoga Beyond the Mat, I don't know who made up that title, but it's a good one. It's a really good one. So yoga on the mat, that's Hatha Yoga. And then Dhyana Yoga, it's kind of, it can be done in any physical position, actually. You're not required to sit down. You can even do it while walking around. You can even do it while in the center of the city. Right, is it, I haven't been here for years. It's Adderley Street. Yeah, you can even do it on Adderley Street. In the Golden Acre. Yeah, you can meditate. You can actually meditate really effectively if you know how to do it. So, but then there are other forms of yoga, like one which Krishna talks about at length, 2 chapters. Chapter 3 and chapter 5 in Bhagavad Gita is karma yoga. Karma, one thing about the Sanskrit language, it's very ancient and it's extremely sophisticated. It's extremely sophisticated. But the one thing is, many words have multiple meanings, and you have to be able to see what meaning would be appropriate by the context, how the word's being used. Yeah, so karma, oftentimes is used in the context of action and reaction, meaning you do good, you get good, you do bad, you get bad, in principle, in extremely as simple terms as you could get. Yeah. What do they say? What goes around comes around. Or in the Bible, what is it? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Not an eye for a tooth and a toe for a finger or something like that, but an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I mean, it's in terms of usefulness, it's useful. But in terms of getting into any detail, it's a very simplistic understanding. So, but it's good enough for starters. That's karma. And one of our artists in our organization in America, years ago, 40 years ago or something, painted a picture of a man with a cow's head and an axe in his hand and a cow tied up down, and you can guess what he was going to do with the axe. But the cow had his face, had a human face, and was looking up at him, looking very shocked and frightened. So karma, yeah. Karma. What you do, you get equal reactions for. Yeah. So, but, the thing is that in the broader sense, actually, the term karma means simply occupation, activity, or work. In the broadest application, your work. What do? You're a student. That's your karma at the moment. After a while you'll qualify in something, we hope. And then we'll ask you and you'll say, I'm a something else, right? What are you studying? Engineering. Then you'll say you're an engineer. So that's your karma. What do you do? So that's your karma. Right. And what do you do? Sir? A lot of things. Okay. All right, you're multidisciplinary. All right. Okay. So you're an educationist. All right. So that's your karma. And I mean, it's possible to do a number of things. There are people who work different jobs, quite different from each other. So karma yoga then means to use your work in the service of God. Like Arjuna, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is speaking to Arjuna, who was a warrior from childhood. He was trained as a warrior. So that was his karma. And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is telling him that you should fight, but don't just fight, but fight for God, for the sort of the mission of God, you could say, like that. So, what do you do?
I tell people about the love of Jesus.
Oh, really? You're a preacher?
No,
You're not?
preach for the different.
You're a presenter, sort of thing.
Yeah, just a Christian that tells people about the love of Jesus.
Okay. And what do you do, if you don't mind me asking?
I do many things as well. I'm a holistic therapist.
Oh,
Also a yoga instructor.
all right. Okay. Yeah, well, it's certainly possible to have more than one karma or occupation. So, sir.
There's another example in the Bible of karma. You reap what you sow.
You what?
You reap what you sow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
What you just said now made me think of that.
Okay.
Where you're saying
Sure.
sometimes your occupation is the karma.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there are different applications of, like I said, Sanskrit words often have, English words also. In some cases, they have multiple meanings or more than one. In Sanskrit, you get it more. So, but karma in the broad sense means occupation. So you can do your occupation, your teaching, your therapy in the service of God. I mean, you can just do it for yourself too. I mean, most people do their work for themselves. They're just trying to make a living. That's not unusual at all. So that's karma yoga. So we got all these divisions of yoga, and there's more. There are more. These are just some of these are the main or most widely practiced forms of yoga. Right. So, but in Bhagavad Gita, which, like we said, it's sort of the foundational text traditionally, going back thousands of years, the foundational text of yoga, Krishna, then having presented these forms of yoga that I just mentioned, then Krishna presents what's called bhakti yoga, which our young lady earlier on said I'd been practicing for 40 years. It's actually a little over 50 years, in fact. But that's all right. Don't stress about it. Yeah. So Bhakti Yoga, the thing about Bhakti Yoga is that it contains elements of the other forms of yoga, their physical aspects, like you are all sitting in positions, you're all, except you. But anyway, don't stress about it also. Everybody else who's sitting on the floor. You're all sitting in a position which is about the most typical Hatha Yoga position. And you're in a more advanced form of it. It's the lotus position. Yeah, it's a fact. And you're just sort of the normal one. So, but you're doing it while hearing our explanation and so on. And the explanation which we're giving is part of Bhakti Yoga. I mean, at least it's leading to Bhakti Yoga, so it's part of Bhakti Yoga. So in other words, the Hatha Yoga is included in Bhakti Yoga also. And the meditation, the mantra yoga, well, I think shortly, isn't it? You're going to do a little mantra yoga. Right. I mean, in the context of Hatha Yoga, or of Dhyana Yoga, they just do some form of meditation, usually on audible sound vibration. Audible. There is oftentimes the idea that when you meditate, at least in the Western world, when you meditate, you just meditate on something within the mind, maybe Om or something, some sound vibration within the mind. But actually in the tradition itself, meditation is mainly done, certainly initially done, on audible sound vibration, because it's much easier to catch the attention with audible sound than just within the mind itself. Yeah. I've had experience. I used to do TM, Transcendental Meditation, about 55 years ago. And I must admit, it wasn't so easy to keep the mind focused. But with audible sound vibration, it's so much easier to capture the attention. So yeah, and then the Sankhya Yoga, the analytical form of yoga or linking with God, with the intelligence by analyzing the world. That's there in Bhakti Yoga by, like, for example, the study of Bhagavad Gita, which is the foundational text of yoga, but it brings one to Bhakti Yoga specifically. By the end of the 6th chapter, Krishna has established very clearly yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana, that the best yogi is engaged in bhakti. Bhakti literally means devotion in very simple terms. Actually, to really translate bhakti, you need a sentence. But in the simple form, you could say devotion. But actually, in a more clear form, you'd say to render service to God in a mood of devotion. This is bhakti yoga. So yeah, So bhakti yoga includes these other forms of yoga that I've mentioned, and others which I haven't mentioned, because there's quite a number of different forms of yoga. But it also includes an element which is not present in the other forms of yoga, and that is the heart. Like I mentioned, devotion. Devotion is something of the heart, the emotions, like the sort of the seat of our being, the heart. So therefore, in the sense that it includes sort of the best of the other processes of yoga, but then it includes the heart, the mood of devotion, of love, which is not included in any of the other forms of yoga. Therefore, bhakti yoga is presented by Krishna, who's the authority basically traditionally in yoga, as being the highest form of yoga. Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhajateyo mam sameyuktatamo mataha. That's a bit of Sanskrit for you. That's Bhagavad Gita chapter 6, verse 47. You can look it up if you've got a Bhagavad Gita. That the devotee, Shraddhavan bhajateyo mam. Shraddhavan means with faith, bhajate, who worships, mam, me. Krishna says, sameyuktatamo mataha. This yogi is the highest of all. Mataha, that's my opinion, Krishna says. So therefore, we advocate, we teach, and promote very actively engagement. I mean, any form of yoga done properly is better than nothing. I mean, at the very least. But really, to practice yoga in the best way and to get the most from yoga, which is, the most you can get from yoga is a personal relationship with God, actually face to face, not like tomorrow or even the day after. I remember when I enrolled for TM, Transcendental Meditation, it was about 1968 or something like that. The fellow who enrolled me told me that after a month you'll experience this, after 3 months you'll experience that, after 6 months you'll realize you're God. Seriously, I tell you what, he told me that. And I didn't know much. I knew a bit about these things because I was very interested in alternative ideas. But when he said that, I thought, what, me? God? Come on, give me a break. I would not make a good God. We'd be in trouble, I think, if I was God. So it takes some time. It takes some time, but gradually through the practice of bhakti yoga, one realizes one's eternal, already existent, but, dormant at this point, personal relationship with God. And that's the goal of yoga. Even hatha yoga, to bring the body, the physical systems in tune with nature, like on a deeper level, nature. It's all part of developing the personal relationship. Shri Shri Nitai Mayapur Chandra Ki Jai. Yeah, it's all part, at least a step in the process, the complete process of yoga, to realize our eternal, already existing, but currently dormant, personal relationship with God. So there you go, everyone. Hare Krishna. And I'm afraid I have to leave you. I have a gathering I have to attend online. But nice to be with you. All the best. Hare Krishna. So I will leave you in Vasanti's extremely capable hands.